and GHD,
Oh,
familyhoney.com. They also sell their honey. I mean, this is a business that does it. And they're in almost all of the farmers markets and such. You'll see Family Honey. Lee Knight runs it.
Reed?
Do you have to worry about overpopulating an area, like not enough pollen to go around type idea?
Yeah, but you'd have to do a whole lot. One of the guys that we've met, he's actually a chef down at Temple Square. He started like 2 years ago, and I think in his backyard he just recently sent a thing out saying he's going to sell some of his hives because he has like 15 in his backyard.
Whoa.
And remember, they will fly over 3 miles to get their pollen. They're going to cover and find and do stuff. You could, I mean, technically, if every home had 2 or 3, 4 hives in every single home, you'd probably overpopulate an area. But for the most part, you're fine.
You're good.
We're not going to overpopulate this area with bees. And they're pollinating everything, so it's good.
Any other advice on top bar versus laying? You know, you went top bar, but it was sort of an emotional decision, it sounds like. Is there, I mean...
I guess if I was... The only issue I've had with doing a top bar, first off, you have to realize you're going to get less honey. And there's not as many local people to say, this is what's happening, look here, this is what you need to do. I personally think that you've got a better chance of getting mites and some other things in a regular laying than you do in a top bar, because the top bar is more natural to the bees. And so, are you a woodworking, want to build stuff and like, you know, hey, I've got a table saw and I rip my wood and I do those things for little projects? I'd say do a laying. You can build your own stuff with pretty much scrap wood and
like
make
if
it.
somebody knew like a high school shop teacher or something?
Yeah, if you knew somebody like that, you know, then you may be fine. I mean, I haven't had to build anything because I bought my top bar and it came with bars. I could easily have also had somebody build me a top bar. This one guy who you know, he was building top bars for about $20 of just 2x4 type construction, 4x6s, and put them in, and you're good to go. The bees are not very picky. Remember, they'll go inside of a tree trunk and build their own stuff. So you're giving them palatial estates to begin with. I would look through Beekeeping for Dummies and kind of make a decision there. I could probably spend a lot of time talking about the differences and why one and the other. I have not personally kept lanes. Like I said, my brother has a top bar. He moved to some lanes because of just the ease for him. He's a doctor, so he's not spending a lot of time ripping wood and doing other stuff. And so we got lanes because he can just buy all the parts, put them in other people's yards. They're a little more stable because the comb is in a frame and such. It's really what you want. Did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to mention that the Langstroth hives, they're more, they're all standardized, and so the same cart from one fits into another, whereas a top bar hive where people kind of build their own, or they're not as standardized.
Right, so that is one thing. I mean, if I could call up, if I had a laying and I needed, and people do this all the time, especially now where a lot more honey was coming in, they get a line and go, does anybody have a honey super that I can buy? And so-and-so's out of them, I need them. Someone's like, I've got 2 extras, great, come drop them on. They're all standardized, all that. You don't do that as easily. And with a top bar, you're not expanding as much because it's a certain size. They fill up, you kind of deal with that. Okay. Any other questions before we go see the bees?
What about water?
Good question. One thing you have to provide for your bees is a water source. You want to have it about 20 to 30 feet away from the hives because when they leave, they need to kind of find where it is. Now that said, we'll walk past where our water thing is out there. They'll find water somewhere. It may be your neighbor's pool, but they will find water. So you want to provide them with some water so they have that. But I know my bees aren't all in using that one water. There's lots of bees coming in and out of it, but I'm sure they're finding water along the way. They're doing other things. So you do want something of a water source nearby for them.
So how much, if you're doing this, how How much water do you put out? What are the containers on you?
I've got
Dog bowl.
it's a large dog bowl is what I have. And it's for large dogs, and it fills itself up if it starts to go down because it's hooked up to a hose and such. But, you know, you don't need, I mean, remember, these are really tiny insects. We put some corks in them so they have someplace to land on in the water, they don't drown. So they'll land on the corks and kind of put their little tongue in there and get a little bit of water out and fly off. You don't need a lot, but you want more than just you don't want a cereal bowl set out. You want a little bit of room for them to stand on the edges and get their water and do those things.
Diving boards.
Well, something like that.
What do you do in the winter when it freezes?
I'll bring it in, because during the winter, they're inside the hive, they're not coming out during the winter. So I'll bring it in and just put it back out in spring for them.
I've tried that with kids too.
Yes?
Little kids running around my backyard, do I need to be concerned? I mean, what kind of,
Are they good kids?
Do you like them there or
do
not?
you really like that? Obviously, a bee flying along could die and land in the grass. But it's not going to happen a lot. And so, you may have a kid step on a bee.
And
It's
that
not
does hurt.
a
I
lot.
have done that.
It's not going to happen. It's not like they're landing and there's a whole bunch all over the place.
Yeah.
So we've had kids all in the backyard and doing stuff when they're here. We tell them usually, hey, don't go poke the bees in the hive. And if they do, yeah. They'll learn
They
that
won't do
pretty
it
quick.
again.
You need to get some honey.
No, it's too weak.
Do you get some today? Actually, we do. We've got after we go and see them, I don't want you with the honey out by the bees, so they find you a lot more tasty than you think. We've got some little straws that we actually just purchased. So you'll see honey in the stores. Most of it's going to be labeled wildflower honey. That's because unless you can show that at least 80% of their area that they would be pollinating and such from, is from a specific type of flower and pollen, you have to call it wildflower. Here in our backyard in the area, ours is all wildflower. So we've got some honey sticks of wildflower honey that you can try. We also have ones of raspberry blossom and buckwheat. Buckwheat, I'm told, is very strong. It's a dark honey, and so we've got more than enough for everyone to try one of each. There's little straws of them. You just kind of bite the tip off and squeeze the honey, and you can see what the different honeys taste like. A lot of bee people will know, hey, I've put my hives in a field of this, and clover. They've been there for 2 months. I know that these honey supers are all going to be clover honey. So they'll label those, and they know where those are. Then they'll move them and put new supers in to go to the almond fields, the almond groves and such. So production ones, they know certain types to do these different things. Here, around here, it's all wildflower. But it is also, for your area, if you've got honey in your area, and you're allergic to things like pollen and all that, a teaspoon of local honey every day is fabulous for your allergies because it's giving you a little dose of local pollen, a little bit at a time, helps you build your antibodies for those. So if you've got local honey that you can get out of your own hive, then a teaspoon of that can really help with fighting off pollen things. From other areas, it's not going to help as much.
Do you notice, how often have you taken your honey? We notice that the honey earlier in the season is much lighter, and towards the end of the season, it's much darker and heavier honey.
Right, darker one, especially they say that if you take honey after Labor Day, it's a lot stronger and potent because for one, it's sat there a little bit longer for it, and just the type of flowers, and there's not as much honey. Remember what happens, we'll show you some about out there. The bees, from the pollen, they make the honey and they put it in the cells. And then all the bees stand on top of it, they beat their wings and they evaporate the water out of it until it's 18% liquid. Then they cap it. Once it's capped honey, it's ready, so to speak. Capped honey